Hello, and welcome back to HA Book Reviews. This is the second time I'm trying to record this, which is actually really upsetting because the first time it was still light out, and now it's completely dark because we have like 3 hours of daylight now. How wonderful is that? There was one benefit. Last time the dogs were barking pretty much the entire time, and they might still do that. So, yay. Anyway, today's book, written by Katie Mack, a theoretical astrophysicist, is The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking. This book was written to talk about the end of the universe from an astrophysics perspective. Sometimes maybe you can judge a book by its cover. Speaking of cover, by the way, I actually quite appreciate this one. It's nothing too fancy or too complex, but I always appreciate covers that can incorporate the title into the art somehow, even if it's as simple as having these lines cover up the text there, thus making it more part of a background. It's a small detail, but an appreciated one nonetheless. But anyway, this book is a moderate length to read, I feel. The pages aren't too big, with a good amount of text per each of the 210 pages of content. This is a book that can be read in an afternoon. Did I lose my spot? I think I might have lost my spot. That might be a problem. I was going to read something. No, it's fine. It's alright. Everything's good. It is a book that can be read in an afternoon if one chooses, but there will be a much higher time commitment than others I've covered. For example, the last book I did a review on, the Cancer Poetry Project, that you could also read in an afternoon, literally speaking, maybe not emotionally, but this would also take just longer than that, even if it is still in that same sort of span of time. Due to the nature of the book talking about the end of the universe, it is far more existential than a typical physics book. It runs through the list of potential ways all of reality might end, and talks about the underlying physics for why it may end that way. It never goes too in-depth on the physics or the math, but still gives a good overview of the important principles for the topics at hand, making this book accessible to a wide variety of people. Though it is still conceptually more complicated than what one might find in, say, a book like Harry Potter. In relation to this decision to not have it be too heavy on the actual theory work, or perhaps one inspired the other, this book is also more of a narrative than a textbook. That is not to say that there is a plot throughout it, there isn't, but it still tells a story. It is a book proper, not a lecture. Also related to those aspects of the writing is that the author has a very strong voice, which is to say, the author or the narrator are themselves almost a character. It is not a strict expose of the end. The author has numerous jokes, references, side tangents, and anecdotes that make the book that much more human, much more relatable to the everyday person. This book is written by someone who is passionate and personal about these topics, not someone who is an objective bystander or dispassionate observer. This allows the book to be consumable and enjoyable to vast swaths of people, from those who know little to those who know much about the topics. One is allowed to enjoy both the structure of the narrative and the writing and the humor, and they are allowed to enjoy the information and the topics, and the balance of what is enjoyed more is flexible and personalized to the reader. But these choices are not without their downsides. Something that I noticed is that the comedy works best when it is actually in relation to the physics being covered. Jokes about superhero movies, for example, just don't really land. They feel out of place. And that isn't exclusive to the subject of the jokes either. Not uncommonly, there are pieces of text, presented how they are in pursuit of comedy, that just don't fit in with the rest of the paragraph or page, whether it be because of style, tone, formatting, or whatever else. The author's voice, while certainly having its benefits as mentioned, can also detract from the narrative or become distracting. It's a stark juxtaposition that overall lessens the quality of the writing. This is not, however, a persistent issue. It, alongside the out-of-place and non-sequitur comedy, appear far more frequently in the beginning and a lot less towards the end. It gives the impression that the author may have been struggling to find the right voice to write this from, struggling to figure out how to properly relate this to the general public, an audience which is usually pretty far removed from scientific in-jokes. Yet, as she was writing this, it seems she improved her style and found her voice. The quality, for me at least, picks up drastically in the last few chapters. Towards the end of it, it even picks up a distinct tone very similar to what fellow YouTuber and author Exerbia does. Not exactly, of course, but it has that vibe to it. If you have read his work, you would understand. Speaking of which, I've actually reviewed Exerbia's book, The Fifth Science, which you can find in the corner now. Hopefully I'm actually pointing to it, but it's in that general direction. You can find it. It should have popped up. But let me give you an example of what I mean, though. This little excerpt here is taken from towards the end of the book. I think I see what she's saying. Would I want to uncover the secrets of the universe, even if I didn't get to share that knowledge or keep it? I would. This seems important. There's some purpose to doing it, even if it is lost. Because it changes who you are now, right? She agrees. I'm delighted that we get to live at a time in the universe when we can see dark energy and not be ripped apart by it. But that means the whole point is that you understand it, and then you enjoy it, and then... So long and thanks for all the fish. Cool. Cool. And actually, I think right now would be a right fine time to introduce the different topics covered by the book. There are 9 different chapters, each covering a different topic. Within each chapter is a whole ton of different pieces of information on physics and the processes we use to understand the universe, so if you want to know more, you should read the actual book. But the chapters are as follows. Introduction to the Cosmos, Big Bang to Now, Big Crunch, Heat Death, Big Rip, Vacuum Decay, it's one of my favorites, one of my favorite ways the universe could end, Bounce, Future of the Future, and Epilogue. As mentioned a few times now, the book does not go deep into the math and the physics behind these topics. Although it isn't a simple conceptual journey, it also isn't particularly difficult. This is a good thing to reach general audiences, but can be detrimental to those that know a lot about these things already. That isn't because it isn't enjoyable. Like I said, the writing is fun and the narrative is fun. Instead, it's because readers may be left wanting more that this book just doesn't provide. If a reader already knows a lot about the intricacies of general relativity, for example, the slightly lower than surface level explanations may not be satisfying. But I wouldn't say that that's the book's fault or the author's fault. Simply put, that is just a fact of the book. It is not meant to be a deep dive. It is meant for the relatively uninaugurated who are nevertheless interested in how everything we know and love will one day end due to the very physics that allow us to know and love. I wouldn't expect a book about the introduction to economics to cater to seasoned economists, and I don't expect that for this book either. But even if I don't want that from this book, it is still a part of it and something I must mention. Now, I believe that no matter who you are, this is likely to be a good read, filled with good information. If you know a lot about these topics, however, and are looking exclusively for information rather than a more simple, fun read, you should look for other books. An example would be The Elegant Universe by Ryan Green, something I so desperately want to cover on this channel, but that I need to hold off on for now. But even so, if you watch this channel, you probably do enjoy reading for the actual experience, not just the information. So, give The End of Everything a chance. Who knows, it might be a good beginning for newfound interest. Overall, I'll give it a solid 7 out of 10. Held back in some ways, but not a bad book by any means. I guess until the end, this has been A2A Book Reviews. Keep on reading.